My son-in-law thought I didn't know he was stealing money from me, considering me a helpless old man. But when he sneaked into my room once again to take a couple $100 from my wallet, he was speechless with shock, what he saw. He will never forget. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. My hand trembled as I counted the bills for the third time. 20, 40, 60. The numbers blurred together, but the result remained unchanged. $1,000 missing from my wallet. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the worn leather wallet that had belonged to my father. Every morning for 68 years, I'd reached for it from the same spot on my nightstand. This morning felt different, wrong. Maybe I spent it somewhere, I whispered to myself, but the words felt hollow. Where would I spend $1,000? The grocery store? My weekly coffee at Murphy's Diner? I searched frantically under the bed, through my dresser drawers, in every jacket pocket. Nothing. The sick feeling in my stomach grew stronger with each empty pocket I found. The smell of bacon drifted upstairs from the kitchen. Helen was humming, some tune from the radio she liked, normal sounds from what should have been a normal morning, but everything had shifted now like a picture frame knocked slightly askew. I walked downstairs slowly, my legs feeling heavier than usual. Helen stood at the stove, flour dusting her blue apron, hair pulled back in the same ponytail she'd worn since high school. "Morning, Dad," she smiled over her shoulder. "Coffee's ready." "Helen, you haven't seen my money, have you? I seem to have misplaced $1,000. Her face immediately showed concern. "Money? Dad, I haven't taken anything from your room. Are you sure you didn't spend it somewhere? Maybe you forgot?" The question stung more than it should have. Was I becoming one of those old men who forgot things? Who accused family members of theft because their minds were failing? "What are you two whispering about?" Cleo appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes from yesterday. His dark eyes moved between Helen and me. "Money problems again?" "Cleo, you haven't been in my room, have you?" I kept my voice steady, casual. His posture changed instantly. Arms crossed, shoulders squared. "What are you implying, Mr. Hargrove? That I'm some kind of thief?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm just asking if you've seen—" "I work 16-hour days to keep this family afloat." His voice rose sharply. "I don't need to steal from anyone, especially not family." Helen stepped between us, her hands fluttering nervously. "Dad, Cleo would never— There has to be an explanation." But I watched Cleo's face as he spoke, the way his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine, the defensive anger that seemed too quick, too practiced. Something cold settled in my chest. "Of course," I said quietly. "I'm sure it will turn up." Cleo grabbed his lunch bag from the counter, checked his appearance in the hallway mirror with unusual care, then headed for the door. "I'm late for work." The door slammed harder than necessary. Helen touched my arm gently. "Dad, you've been under stress since Mom passed. Sometimes our minds play tricks when we're grieving." I nodded, but my eyes followed Cleo's truck as it disappeared down Maple Street. 3 years of living alone had taught me to know every dollar in that wallet. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being robbed. That evening found us gathered in the living room like any other family. Helen sat on the couch folding laundry, sorting Cleo's work shirts into neat piles. I pretended to read the sports section, but my eyes kept drifting to Cleo, pacing near the window. He couldn't sit still. Every few minutes he'd check his phone, run his hand through his hair, or adjust the blinds. The nervous energy radiating from him was almost palpable. "Honey," he said suddenly, turning to Helen with a smile that seemed too bright, "I have a surprise for you. Close your eyes." Helen's face lit up with genuine delight. "Cleo, what did you do?" "Just close your eyes and hold out your hand." I lowered my newspaper slightly, watching as Cleo produced a small velvet jewelry box from his jacket pocket. The kind of box that came from expensive stores downtown, not the discount places where we usually shopped. Helen gasped when she opened it. "Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. Where did you get money for this?" The gold chain caught the living room light, delicate but substantial. 18 karat, if I had to guess. Real gold, not the plated stuff. I'd worked enough years in Detroit's automotive industry to recognize quality when I saw it. "I picked up extra shifts at the warehouse," Cleo said, his chest puffing with pride. "Worked all weekend loading trucks. Double overtime pay." You didn't tell me you were working weekends. Helen's voice held wonder, not suspicion. Wanted it to be a surprise. When you want to provide for your family, you find ways to make it happen. I folded my paper carefully. They pay pretty well for weekend work these days. Cleo's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Time and a half on Saturday, double time on Sunday, plus hazard pay for handling chemical shipments. Which warehouse was this? I kept my tone conversational, mildly interested. The one off 8 Mile. New contract with Ford. He was already helping Helen fasten the chain around her neck. Dangerous work, but worth it to see my wife smile. Helen threw her arms around him, tears of happiness in her eyes. It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me. I watched them embrace, calculating quickly in my head. $800 minimum for a chain like that, maybe more. Funny how the numbers worked out. $1,000 missing, $800 spent on jewelry. The math was starting to make uncomfortable sense. You're spoiling her, I said, forcing a smile. She deserves to be spoiled, Cleo replied, but his eyes met mine with something that might have been challenge. A man should take care of his family, whatever it takes. The receipt crinkled in his back pocket as he sat down. I caught a glimpse of the store logo, Silverman's Fine Jewelry on Woodward Avenue. Expensive taste for a truck driver picking up weekend warehouse shifts. Well, I said, standing and stretching, think I'll turn in early tonight. Long day tomorrow. Dad, are you feeling all right? Helen looked up from admiring her reflection in the chain. Just tired, sweetheart. Good night. But I didn't go to sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, wallet in my hands, listening to their happy conversation drifting up from downstairs. Helen's laughter mixed with Cleo's deeper voice, painting a picture of domestic bliss. The connection was becoming impossible to ignore. Missing money, expensive gift, lies about weekend work that I could easily verify with one phone call to the warehouse district. I'd been an engineer for 43 years. I knew how to solve problems by following the evidence, even when the solution was one I didn't want to find. 3 weeks later, I sat on my bed at 8 in the morning, wallet open in my hands, staring at the undeniable truth. Exactly $500 missing. This time there was no confusion, no self-doubt about my failing memory. I'd been checking my wallet every morning since the first theft, keeping mental notes of every dollar spent. Yesterday evening I'd had $800. Now I had $300. The theft had happened sometime after midnight, when Helen and I were asleep. Cleo had been the last one home from his supposed evening shift, coming in around 11:30 with the smell of beer on his breath. I set the wallet on my nightstand and walked to the window. Cleo's truck was already gone. He left for work at 7:30 sharp every morning. But this morning I'd heard him in the bathroom at 6, humming. Actually humming while he got ready for work. The pattern was becoming clear. Steal money, act normal, maybe even cheerful. Wait a few days, then spend it on something that would make Helen happy and grateful. Keep her loyalty divided between her husband and her father. But I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I picked up my phone and dialed information. Detroit Electronics, downtown district, please. The store clerk's voice was helpful. Detroit Electronics, how can I help you? Good morning. Do you carry small hidden cameras? Yes, sir. We have several models. What's your application? Home security. I need something discreet. We've got wireless units with night vision, motion activation, connects to your smartphone. Very popular with our customers lately. I'll be in this morning to look at your selection. Downstairs, Helen was getting ready for her shift at the supermarket. She looked up as I descended the stairs, already dressed in my good jacket. Dad, where are you going so early? Into town, honey. Need to pick up something from the electronics store. Want Cleo to drive you? He mentioned going that way for work. The irony wasn't lost on me. No thanks. I prefer to drive myself. Helen kissed my cheek. Be careful on those downtown streets. They're doing construction on Woodward. I patted her shoulder, hating that I couldn't tell her what was really happening. Not yet. Not until I had proof she couldn't deny or explain away. In my car, I checked the rearview mirror before backing out of the driveway. My reflection looked different than it had in months. Determined. The confused, grieving widower was gone. The engineer was back, ready to solve a problem with methodical precision. The missing money wasn't random. The amounts, the timing, the defensive reactions. everything pointed to a calculated plan. Someone thought they were stealing from a forgetful old man who wouldn't notice or wouldn't fight back. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I drove toward downtown Detroit with steady hands, my mind already working through the technical specifications I'd need. Night vision capability, motion activation, smartphone connectivity, maybe audio recording too if Michigan law allowed it. Evidence first, confrontation second, justice third. The game had changed, but Cleo didn't know it yet. Tech World Electronics sat on Woodward Avenue like a beacon of possibility. I parked carefully between two compact cars, my engineering instincts already cataloging the store's security cameras mounted above the entrance. If I was going to catch a thief, I needed to think like one. The electronic door chime announced my arrival. Rows of gadgets stretched before me. Smartphones, tablets, security equipment. A young clerk with thick glasses approached, probably wondering what an old man wanted with all this technology. Help you find something specific, sir? Home security cameras. Something discreet but reliable. His face brightened with professional interest. Residential or commercial application? Personal. I need clear image quality, especially in low light conditions. He led me to a display wall filled with various camera models. Boxes promised features I'd only seen in movies. Night vision, motion detection, smartphone connectivity. Technology had advanced significantly since my engineering days. This model here, he pointed to a compact black device, records up to 12 hours on full charge. I examined the specifications card. What about image quality in darkness? Crystal clear facial recognition from 10 feet. Infrared sensors automatically activate when ambient light drops below threshold levels. Motion activation sensitivity? Adjustable through the app. Won't trigger from shadows or small movements, but catches all significant motion. Very popular with our customers lately. The Night Eye Pro Mini fit in my palm. Smaller than I'd expected, but the specifications were impressive. 1080p resolution, 140-degree viewing angle, wireless connectivity. Everything an engineer could want for gathering evidence. I'll take it. During the drive home, the small box sat on my passenger seat like a weight. 40 years of engineering experience, and I was using it to catch a thief in my own home. The irony wasn't lost on me. Helen's car was gone from the driveway. Her shift at the supermarket ran until 6. Cleo's truck was also missing, which meant I had the house to myself for installation. Perfect timing. Inside, I spread the camera components across my kitchen table like puzzle pieces. The instruction manual was surprisingly straightforward. Mount, connect to Wi-Fi, download app, calibrate settings. Basic technology that even someone my age could master. In my bedroom, I studied the layout with an engineer's eye. The nightstand sat directly across from my dresser, which held several framed family photos. Behind the largest frame, an 8x10 picture of Helen's wedding would provide the perfect hiding spot. Positioning the camera required precision. Too high, and it would miss the nightstand. Too low, and furniture would block the view. I adjusted the angle 3 times before achieving optimal coverage of both the wallet's location and the water glass I always kept beside my bed. The smartphone app connected immediately. Secure View displayed a clear black and white image of my bedroom, complete with timestamp and battery indicator. I tested the night vision by closing the curtains. The infrared sensors activated automatically, revealing every detail in ghostly clarity. Motion sensitivity required careful calibration. Too sensitive would trigger false alarms from shadows or settling house sounds. Too conservative might miss subtle movements. I set it to medium sensitivity and tested by walking past the nightstand. The camera captured my movement perfectly, sending an instant alert to my phone. Now for the bait. I counted exactly $300 from my remaining cash, arranging the bills so they were clearly visible when the wallet lay open. Not enough to seem careless, but sufficient to tempt someone who thought they'd gotten away with previous thefts. The water glass went in its usual spot, a habit from my late wife's time, when she insisted I keep hydrated through the night. Now it would serve as additional evidence if my suspicions proved correct. Everything was ready. Camera hidden, bait positioned, app configured. I turned off the bedroom light and paused in the doorway, knowing that tomorrow morning would change everything. In the darkness, the camera's tiny red recording light blinked once, then disappeared into surveillance mode. 7 o'clock arrived with the precision of a factory whistle. My eyes opened immediately, trained by decades of early rising for shift work, but today felt different. Today I wasn't checking my wallet with confusion or doubt. Today I was collecting evidence. The wallet lay exactly where I'd positioned it, but the bills were gone. All $300 vanished without trace. No surprise this time, just grim satisfaction that my trap had worked exactly as planned. I reached for my smartphone with hands that trembled slightly, not from age or uncertainty, but from anticipation. The Secure View app showed one motion-triggered recording, timestamped at 2:47 a.m., household sleeping time, perfect conditions for theft. My finger hovered over the play button. Once I watched this video, there would be no more doubts, no more benefit of doubt, just cold, documented truth. The infrared footage began with an empty bedroom. Then the door opened slowly, carefully. A figure moved with practiced stealth toward my nightstand. The camera's facial recognition was crystal clear. Cleo's features showed in perfect detail as he approached my sleeping area. He moved like someone who'd done this before. No hesitation, no fumbling around. Straight to the wallet, fingers deftly removing the bills. Quick count to verify the amount. Professional efficiency that spoke of experience. But then something happened that made my blood run cold. After pocketing my money, Cleo picked up my water glass, the one I drank from every morning, and deliberately spit into it. Not accidentally, not carelessly. A calculated act of disrespect and contempt. "How long has this been going on?" I whispered to my phone screen. "How many times have I drunk his spit?" I replayed the most offensive moments twice more. The theft itself was methodical, practiced. But that spit, that was personal. That was a man who not only stole from his benefactor, but actively despised him. My fingers shook as I saved the video to both phone storage and cloud backup. Evidence this clear was too valuable to risk losing to technical failure. The house remained quiet downstairs. Helen getting ready for work, probably humming again while she made coffee. Cleo pretending to sleep off his night shift, playing the tired husband who worked so hard to provide for his family. I needed advice, someone objective who could help me process what I'd discovered. Jim Patterson answered on the second ring. We'd worked together for 20 years before retirement, shared enough coffee breaks and engineering problems to build trust. "Jim, sorry to call so early. I need advice about something serious." "What's wrong, buddy? You sound upset." "I just caught my son-in-law stealing from me, on camera." Silence stretched across the phone line. Finally, "Are you absolutely certain? Video evidence? Clear as daylight. Shows his face. Shows him taking my money. Shows him—" I paused, still processing the spit. "Shows him doing things that prove this wasn't his first time." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. Helen doesn't suspect anything. This will destroy her world." "Evidence is evidence, Lester. You can't ignore theft just to preserve feelings." "I know. But she loves him. Has no idea what kind of man she married. Maybe it's time she learned." After hanging up, I sat on my bed edge, staring at the frozen video frame showing Cleo's face clearly illuminated by infrared light. The camera had captured everything perfectly. Timing, actions, identity. Irrefutable proof of systematic theft. Now I had evidence. But what exactly was I going to do with it? Through the thin walls, I could hear Helen moving around the master bedroom, getting dressed for another day of innocent ignorance. Soon she'd kiss my forehead goodbye and head off to work, completely unaware that her husband was a thief, and worse. The living room felt different this morning. Same furniture, same photographs, same morning light filtering through lace curtains my wife had hung 15 years ago. But the atmosphere had changed completely. I settled into my recliner with coffee that tasted bitter despite the cream. On the side table, a leather-bound photo album caught my attention. Pictures from December, when Helen and Cleo first moved in. Everyone smiling. Everyone hopeful. The contrast with this morning's reality hit like a physical blow. Opening the album brought back memories I'd tried to preserve. December 20th, their arrival day. Boxes stacked in the driveway. Helen crying with relief. Cleo shaking my hand with genuine gratitude. Dad, we're so grateful, Helen had said, hugging me tight enough to crack ribs. Without you, I honestly don't know what we'd have done. Cleo had stood behind her, humble and appreciative. Lester, I promise we'll get back on our feet quickly. Just need a few months to find steady work. I'll help with repairs around the house, he'd added. Earn our keep while we're here. Take your time, I'd told them both. Family helps family. That's what your mother would have wanted. Those first weeks had been wonderful. Cleo actually did help. Fixed the leaky kitchen faucet I'd been ignoring. Cleaned gutters before the heavy January snow. Even helped me organize tools in the garage. We'd shared evening beers and talked about his plans to find better employment. Helen glowed with happiness. Having family close again, seeing her father and husband getting along, building what she hoped would be a permanent arrangement. She'd started planning holiday decorations for next Christmas, talking about traditions we could establish. But when had gratitude transformed into entitlement? When had Cleo's respectful Mr. Hargrove become the dismissive Lester, accompanied by eye rolls? When had helpful suggestions become bitter criticisms about my age, my habits, my supposed interference in their marriage? The change had been gradual enough that I'd explained it away. Financial stress making him irritable, job hunting frustration affecting his mood, normal adjustment period for 3 adults sharing space. I'd made excuses for increasingly disrespectful behavior, his complaints about my television being too loud, his suggestions that I eat dinner in the kitchen while they use the dining room, his pointed comments about old people who couldn't manage their own money. Looking back now, those comments about money management felt particularly insulting. He'd been stealing from me while criticizing my supposed financial incompetence. The photo album showed Christmas morning, Cleo opening the expensive tool set I'd bought him, Helen delighted with her new winter coat. All of us gathered around the tree like a real family. 3 weeks later, he'd committed his first theft. How long had he been planning it? Had he scoped out my bedroom during those helpful visits? Noted my habits, my routines, the location of my wallet? Love you, Dad. Helen's voice startled me from my memories. She stood in the doorway, dressed for work, purse slung over her shoulder. She bent to kiss my forehead. The same gesture every morning since moving in. Love you too, sweetheart. You seem quiet today. Everything okay? The weight of video evidence felt heavy in my pocket. How could I tell her that her husband was a thief? That the man she trusted completely had been systematically robbing her father while she slept beside him? Just thinking about things. Go on, don't be late for work. She headed toward the door, then paused. Dad? I know having us here has been an adjustment, but I'm really grateful. Cleo is too, even if he doesn't always show it well. The irony was almost unbearable. After her car disappeared down Maple Street, I closed the photo album and returned it to the side table. Those December memories felt like artifacts from someone else's life. A more naive version of myself who'd believed in the goodness of family, who'd trusted without verification. The camera evidence demanded action, but what kind? Confrontation would shatter Helen's world. Calling police would destroy the family permanently. Staying silent meant accepting continued theft and disrespect. I had proof now. The question was, what kind of justice did I want? The chamomile tea steamed in my late wife's favorite china cup, but even Martha's old remedy for stress couldn't calm the storm brewing inside me. I sat at the kitchen table with my 2025 wall calendar spread open, red pen in hand, marking dates like a detective building a case. January 15th, the first real conflict. I drew a sharp X over the date, remembering how Cleo had tracked mud through the house despite my simple request about removing shoes at the door. You old people always find something to complain about, he'd said, voice dripping with contempt. Helen had jumped in immediately. Dad's just particular about his floors. It's his house. But I'd seen the look in Cleo's eyes. Not embarrassment or apology. Resentment. Like I was some burden he had to tolerate, rather than the man providing him shelter. January 28th, another X. Maybe if you didn't interfere so much with our decisions, our finances would be better. That's what he'd said when I'd suggested Helen might benefit from overtime hours at the supermarket. Not a discussion, an accusation, as if my gentle advice was somehow sabotaging their future. I flipped to February, pen hovering over multiple potential dates. The disrespect had accelerated that month, becoming a weekly occurrence instead of isolated incidents. February 14th, Valentine's Day. The day he'd given Helen that expensive gold chain. The day after he'd stolen my first $1,000. My hand trembled slightly as I marked that date with a particularly bold X. He'd been planning it even then, sizing up my routines while criticizing my outdated lifestyle. Every complaint about house rules had been reconnaissance for theft. February 26th. This house feels like a prison with all these ridiculous rules. That comment had stung because Helen nodded along, caught between loyalty to her husband and respect for her father. I'd watched her struggle with divided allegiances while Cleo systematically undermined my authority in my own home. March dates multiplied under red ink. Each X represented another verbal assault disguised as family tension. Old folks can't handle change? Maybe it's time to consider assisted living. Some people shouldn't manage their own money. The last comment made me sick now. While questioning my mental capacity, he'd been stealing proof of his own criminal behavior. I closed the calendar and checked the kitchen clock. 7:30 in the evening. Helen would be working late inventory at the supermarket. Cleo was supposedly picking up overtime at the warehouse, though I knew better now what his evening activities actually involved. Tomorrow I'd drive downtown for special supplies. Tonight, I'd plan. The video evidence had shown me Cleo's criminal nature. These marked calendar dates revealed his manipulative character. Both pieces of information would prove useful very soon. I rinsed Martha's teacup carefully, treating it with the respect Cleo had never shown this house or its owner. Tomorrow would begin the final phase of a lesson 3 months in the making. Some people needed to learn that disrespecting your benefactor came with consequences. Prankster's Paradise blazed in neon letters above a storefront that looked like a carnival had exploded. I checked the address twice before parking, feeling oddly out of place among the colorful displays of whoopee cushions and fake spiders. But this wasn't about humor. This was about justice. Inside, shelves stretched floor to ceiling with every conceivable practical joke. Buzzer handshakes, squirting flowers, rubber snakes. A young clerk with purple hair and multiple piercings approached, clearly curious about the serious-faced grandfather browsing shock devices. "Looking for anything specific, sir?" "Something that delivers consequences for unwanted behavior. Harmless but memorable." She led me to a display case filled with various electrical novelties. "These shock items are pretty popular. What kind of application did you have in mind?" I examined a shocking wallet, testing its weight and texture. Real leather exterior, indistinguishable from an ordinary billfold. "How strong is the electrical charge?" "Completely safe, just 9 volts. Enough to surprise someone without causing any harm. Battery lasts about 6 months with normal use." "Define normal use." "Most customers deploy it once or twice before the novelty wears off. But this model's built for repeat applications if needed." "Perfect." I tested it on my own palm. A sharp zap that would definitely get someone's attention without causing injury. After 43 years of engineering, I appreciated good technical design even in novelty items. "I'll take it, and I need realistic counterfeit money. Movie quality." Her eyebrows raised slightly, but she led me to another section filled with prop currency. "These bills look identical to real money in normal lighting. Only detailed inspection reveals the motion picture use only watermarks." I examined the fake hundreds and twenties, impressed by the paper quality and printing precision. They felt authentic. Weight, distributed correctly, even had the proper texture of worn currency. "How much for $300 worth?" $37.50 for the prop money, plus $9.90 for the shock wallet. Call it 50 even. I handed over the real cash, thinking about poetic justice. $300 of fake money to replace the 300 real dollars Cleo had stolen. He wanted to take my money? Tomorrow night, he'd get exactly what he deserved. The clerk packaged everything carefully to prevent accidental activation. "Hope this works out for whatever you're planning." "Oh, it will work perfectly." Back in my car, I secured the purchases in my trunk and reviewed the installation plan during the drive home. After Helen fell asleep, but before Cleo's usual theft window, probably around midnight, replaced my real wallet with the shocking version, loaded with counterfeit currency positioned to look authentic in darkness. At the red light on Maple Street, I checked my rearview mirror. Just an ordinary grandfather running afternoon errands. Nobody would suspect that tonight I'd prepare something my son-in-law would never forget. The trap was chosen. Now came the setting. Helen ladled beef stew into our bowls with the careful attention she always gave family dinners, trying to create warmth in a house that had grown steadily colder over recent weeks. The kitchen smelled of bay leaves and simmering vegetables, but underneath the domestic comfort lurked something poisonous. "This looks wonderful, sweetheart." I kept my voice deliberately pleasant while studying Cleo across the table. He'd been unusually quiet since arriving home, picking at his food instead of devouring it with his typical enthusiasm. "Dad, you've been working on something in the garage all afternoon. New project?" "Just organizing tools. Amazing what you find when you really examine things closely." Cleo's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Something in my tone had caught his attention, though he couldn't identify the threat yet. "Speaking of examining things," I continued, buttering my bread with deliberate slowness, "I've been thinking about home security lately. Fascinating how technology lets you monitor everything that happens, even when you're sleeping." "Security?" Helen looked up from her stew. "Are you worried about break-ins?" "Not break-ins exactly. More like internal security issues. Someone in this neighborhood thinks other people's money is community property." Cleo set down his fork entirely. "There you go again with your paranoia, Lester. Maybe you forget where you spend money and blame other people." "Paranoia?" I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "That's an interesting theory, Cleo. Tell me, how much did that warehouse overtime pay you last weekend?" His jaw tightened. "Why does that matter?" "Just curious about wage rates these days. Seems like some people earn money very easily for very little actual work." Helen sensed the underlying hostility and jumped in quickly. "Can't we just have one peaceful family meal? You two have been tense with each other all week." "Your father's been making accusations he can't prove," Cleo snapped, his facade of respectful son-in-law finally cracking. "I'm tired of listening to complaints from a cheap old man who counts every penny like it's his last." The silence that followed was deafening. Helen's spoon clattered against her bowl. "Cheap old man?" I repeated softly, leaning back in my chair. "That's a fascinating choice of words from someone living rent-free in my house." "Lester," Cleo started, but I held up my hand. "No, please continue. I'm very interested in your perspective on my character, particularly your thoughts about my money management habits." Helen looked between us with growing alarm. "What is this really about? You're both acting like you know something I don't." I studied Cleo's flushed face, seeing fear beneath the anger. He knew he'd gone too far, revealed too much of his true feelings, but he didn't know how much I actually knew. "Your husband and I just have different philosophies about respect," I said finally. "Isn't that right, Cleo?" He pushed back from the table abruptly. "I don't have to sit here and listen to this nonsense." "No," I agreed calmly. "You don't? This is my house, after all." After he stormed upstairs, Helen began clearing dishes with shaky hands. "Dad, what's really going on? You've both been acting strange. Sometimes people show their true character when they think nobody's watching." She paused, dish towel in hand. "What does that mean?" "You'll understand soon enough, sweetheart." I excused myself and headed upstairs, leaving Helen to puzzle over the evening's tensions. In my bedroom, I retrieved the shock wallet and counterfeit money from their hiding place behind my dresser. In a few hours, when the house settled into sleep, I'd set the final trap. Tomorrow morning would bring the confrontation months in the making. Tonight, justice prepared to spring. The red digits on my bedside clock glowed 1:57 a.m. when I heard the first soft footstep in the hallway. I controlled my breathing, keeping it slow and deep, like someone lost in peaceful sleep, while my heart hammered against my ribs with anticipation. 3 months of theft and humiliation were about to meet their consequences. The shock wallet sat innocuously on my nightstand, loaded with movie prop hundreds that looked genuine in dim light. Every detail had been planned with an engineer's precision, bait positioned exactly where Cleo expected it, battery charged to optimal voltage, fake money aged to feel authentic. Another footstep, closer now. My bedroom door opened with the barest whisper of hinges. Cleo had practiced this routine enough to avoid every creaking floorboard, every loose carpet edge. He moved like a professional burglar in his own family's home. I kept my eyes closed, but tracked his approach, through subtle changes in air movement and the soft sounds of careful placement. 3 steps toward the dresser. Pause to verify my apparent unconsciousness. 2 more steps to the nightstand. The moment of truth arrived with electrical precision. Ah! What the... Cleo's agonized shout shattered the night silence as 9 volts of justice shot through his nervous system. The fake money scattered across the floor as he stumbled backward, clutching his shocked hand against his chest. I opened my eyes and reached for the bedside lamp, flooding the room with warm yellow light. "Oh my, what woke me up?" I asked with perfectly feigned confusion. "Cleo, what are you doing in my bedroom at 2 in the morning?" He stood frozen beside my bed, movie prop bills scattered around his feet like evidence in a courtroom. His right hand still trembled from the electrical shock, fingers opening and closing reflexively. I was just getting some water from the kitchen," he stammered, but his eyes couldn't meet mine. "Water?" I sat up slowly, making a show of adjusting my pajamas. "From my wallet? And how did those fake bills end up all over my floor?" "Fake bills? I don't understand what you're talking about." "The same way you didn't understand the previous times you stole from me?" I reached for my smartphone on the nightstand, thumb hovering over the saved video file. "The same way you didn't understand when you spit in my drinking water." His face went completely white. "You're crazy. I never took anything from you." "Really?" I held up the phone, screen angled so he could see the paused video footage. "Should we review the security footage together? I have excellent recordings of your late-night activities." The trapped animal look in his eyes told me everything I needed to know. 3 months of careful planning had worked exactly as designed, but our private confrontation was about to become a family crisis. "What's all that noise? Is everything okay up there?" Helen's voice called from the hallway, sleepy and concerned. Both men froze, knowing the moment of full revelation had finally arrived. Helen appeared in the doorway, wearing her blue terry-cloth robe, hair disheveled from sleep, trying to make sense of why 2 grown men were wide awake and shouting at 2 in the morning. Her eyes took in the scene, scattered fake money, her husband's guilty expression, her father holding his phone like evidence. "What's happening here? Why is everyone awake?" She stepped into the room, slippers shuffling across the carpet. "Cleo, why do you look like you've seen a ghost?" "Your husband has been stealing my money for months," I said quietly, watching her face carefully. "I finally caught him in the act." "Dad, that's impossible." Helen's voice held automatic defense, the loyalty of a wife protecting her spouse. "Cleo would never do something like that. You must be mistaken. Watch this video and tell me what you see." I held out my phone, finger hovering over the play button. Helen shook her head at first, but the certainty in my voice made her step closer. The infrared footage began playing, clear as daylight despite the darkness, showing Cleo's careful approach to my nightstand. "This can't be real," she whispered, but her voice already carried the weight of growing recognition. The video continued. Cleo removing money from my wallet with practiced efficiency, counting bills quickly. Then the moment that made Helen gasp aloud. Her husband deliberately spitting in my water glass. "Cleo!" She turned to face him, eyes wide with horror. "Is that really you? And you spit in Dad's drinking water?" "This is all a setup." Cleo's voice rose desperately. "He's trying to frame me. You can't trust that footage. He could have edited it somehow. But I can see your face clearly. That's our bedroom door in the background. That's the exact shirt you wore yesterday." Helen's voice grew smaller with each observation. "How could you edit something so specific?" I let the video speak for itself, watching my daughter's world crumble as undeniable evidence replaced comfortable illusions. 3 months of lies were dissolving in real time. "Helen, you have to believe me," Cleo pleaded. "I work hard to provide for us. Why would I need to steal from your father?" "Because you've been stealing instead of working," I said simply. "Those expensive gifts you bought Helen? My money? Those weekend shifts you claimed at the warehouse? More lies to cover your theft." Helen sank onto the edge of my bed, hands covering her face as the full scope of deception became clear. The gold chain around her neck, purchased with stolen money. The gratitude she'd felt for his hard work, all based on criminal behavior. "How long has this been going on?" she asked through her fingers. "At least 3 months, probably since you moved in." The silence stretched like a wound opening. Finally, Helen raised her head, and looked at her husband with eyes that held no love, only betrayal and disgust. "Pack your things," she whispered without looking up. "We're leaving tomorrow." Cleo started to protest, but Helen's raised hand stopped him cold. The damage was irreversible. Justice had arrived wearing the face of truth. By 3 o'clock the next afternoon, the sound of packing had replaced the morning's tense silence. Helen folded her clothes with mechanical precision, each movement careful and dignified, despite the tears that occasionally fell onto her belongings. In contrast, Cleo threw items carelessly into cardboard boxes, slamming drawers and muttering under his breath about unfairness. I stayed nearby, but didn't pressure her with conversation. Sometimes support meant simply being present while someone processed betrayal. "Dad, I owe you an apology," Helen said quietly as she wrapped her good dishes in newspaper. "I should have seen what was happening, should have questioned where that money was coming from." "You're not at fault, honey. You trusted like family should trust. That's not weakness. That's how good people live." She paused in her packing, looking around the guest room that had been her temporary home. "I don't know where we'll go. I just know we can't stay here anymore. You have your job, your own income. You'll figure it out." I handed her another sheet of newspaper. "And you'll always be welcome back here when you're ready. This is your home, too." Outside, Cleo loaded boxes into his truck with aggressive efficiency, each movement broadcasting resentment. Neighbors pretended not to watch from their windows, but suburban curiosity was stronger than politeness. As Helen carried her final suitcase to the driveway, she stopped beside me on the front steps. "I hate that it came to this, but I'm glad you showed me the truth. Living with lies would have been worse. I'm proud of you for having the courage to face it." She hugged me tightly, the kind of embrace that said goodbye and thank you and I love you all at once. "I'll call you when we're settled. I need some time to process everything." Cleo slammed the truck tailgate shut and looked at me with barely controlled anger. "You'll regret destroying this family, old man. We'll see who's right in the end." "Just drive carefully," I said evenly. "Take care of my daughter. That's all that matters now." Helen climbed into the passenger seat without looking back. The truck's engine rumbled to life, diesel exhaust clouding the April air. I watched them disappear down Maple Street, Helen's profile visible through the side window. Sad, but resolute. The house felt different when I stepped back inside. Quieter, more spacious, mine again. I made a single cup of coffee instead of the family pot I'd grown accustomed to, then settled into my recliner with the evening paper. Outside, spring darkness settled peacefully over the neighborhood. No more missing money, no more disrespect, no more walking on eggshells in my own home. Justice hadn't been revenge, it had been protection. The engineering approach had worked perfectly. Identify the problem, design a solution, implement the fix, verify the results. Sometimes protecting family meant having the courage to reveal uncomfortable truths, even when those truths shattered comfortable illusions. My home was secure again. The problem was solved. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.